And, you know, we have these Zooms, and then what we do, we record them, and Nina's so good technologically. And so she puts them on YouTube. And so you can go on to YouTube, YouTube / Blazing Radiance, and then look for the Tuesday Zooms. And so that, and she's named these different ones, the testimonies that are on there. So if you've got a specific one that you want somebody to watch or whatever, they can do that. So anyhow, I want to introduce Marilyn now. She's a second level business leader, been in the group a number of years. Marilyn used to come over to my house. I mean, this is a long time ago, Marilyn. How long ago has that been? You're muted.
Like 2001.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't realize that. Well, anyhow, she was always a really, really good buyer of product. And I mean, I always loved to see Marilyn come because I knew she was going to carry away half my shelves, you know. But anyhow, Marilyn's going to share her story tonight with her granddaughter and the ailments and all the stuff that they've had. And she's been in Shackley. You've been a director a long time, haven't you?
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't know how many years. I've lost track. But anyhow, welcome, Marilyn. You're on.
Okay. I was hoping my daughter could be on here to actually share this story because it's her daughter that I'm going to be talking about. My granddaughter's name is Mackenzie, and she was in 8th grade when this series of events happened. Very active, thin enough, and I say that on purpose to start with. She was in cheerleading. She was just always active. And one day she called Mom to tell her that she was at school, and she called Mom and said, Mom, I'm breaking out around my ankles, my feet. I've got like hives. So my daughter went to go take a look at it at school, not necessarily to bring her home. By the time she got there, it was spreading up her legs. It was getting worse as time was passing. So she took her on home. The next day, they ended up contacting the doctor. And I have notes on this from my daughter to try to keep on track with it. Anyway, called the doctor. Doctor said, you know, go ahead and put her on Benadryl and Tylenol protocol. So let's see, she was in 8th grade then. She's a sophomore in college now. I will share that with you. So that tells you how long ago it was, what, 6 years, something like that. The hives just kept coming. It was even up in her hair. By that next morning, she was having trouble walking. And she could not even lift her legs. They had a baby gate up because they had 2 very small children at that point in time. She could not even lift her legs up to step over the baby gate. Ended up taking her to the doctor at that point. And they were just saying, continue with the protocol. That night, she goes to bed. She can't even cover, she's becoming so weak, she cannot even cover herself up with her own blankets. And see, this is stuff I had completely forgotten about. That's why I needed to talk with her about this. So the next day, so I think that would be like day 3, she starts running fever. Then she called the doctor facility and wanted to see a different doctor because it was a whole group of doctors. She no longer wanted to talk to that other one because the other one was just pretty much blowing her off. Excuse my terminology, but that's exactly what was happening. She started with this other doctor, and he started running a series of tests. And throughout these blood tests, they were checking her for meningitis, leukemia, a UTI, lupus, MS, leukemia, arthritis, many other things we don't even know. Anyway, what they come to find out was her white blood cell count was very, very elevated. And her fever kept rising. She ultimately, her fever ended up getting up to 105. Now, this took place over a few days. And just to kind of back up a little bit, Melissa already had her on a good vitamin protocol, you know, multivitamin, just your basic like B complex, the adult, the Vitally, I don't know, so a little bit of omegas and so on. But when this started, and her, not only did she have the hives, she had the high fever, she had the extreme weakness, her joints, her knees, her ankles, her hands were all swollen. And she was in a lot of pain. Ultimately, she ended up missing 6 weeks of school straight because she could not, she couldn't even hardly walk. And she stayed with me for a great portion of that because Mama had to work. Daddy had to work. They were self-employed. There was no insurance. And we were just feeding Mackenzie Shackley. We're feeding her protein, we're feeding her Vivix, we're feeding her Nutriferon, Performance, Omega, the DR, vitamin C, lecithin, B complex, Immunity I, and anything else we could think of in the Shackley, on the Shackley shelf that we thought would feed her body to help her. And when I say we were feeding her Shackley, that's exactly what I mean. It wasn't just a couple of this or a couple of that. She wasn't hardly able to keep any, she couldn't eat. And so we would make small amounts of the shake and just give her little bits throughout the day. The Performance, we would just give her little bits to keep her hydrated throughout the day. They never did find out what was wrong with her. Never. Doctor said it was a virus. He had reached the point, I don't know, about halfway through what I will call about a 2.5-month period, to where he said, if I don't see a turnaround within a couple of days, I'm going to be calling the Infectious Disease Control, CDC, to try to find out what's wrong. Well, Melissa, my daughter Melissa, and the doctor, if Mackenzie wasn't being taken into his office, they were on the phone with each other every other day, every day, keeping very close contact. She was never hospitalized because we were able to take care of her as well as she would have been taken care of, if not better, in the hospital. When she did start going back to work, it was for an hour one day, maybe 2 hours the next day. But when she turned a corner and her white blood cell count started dropping, and he just said, whatever it is you're doing, because Melissa shared with him what we were doing. He never put her on antibiotics, nothing, because he said what this is not going to be, whatever this is not going to be helped by what I would prescribe for her. And ultimately, that's all we did for her. As I said, never knew what it was. What we come to find out later was a very close friend of mine, her niece, now we live in Northwest Indiana, her niece who lived in Indianapolis had all the exact same symptoms. Now she was hospitalized. They never did find out what was wrong with her either. And she ended up missing about the same amount of school. I think they tried different medications, drugs, antibiotics, whatever on her. But at the end of this, well, we had noticed it about halfway through, Mackenzie started losing her hair. We realized just how much hair she lost when it started coming back in, because she had this long haired, almost well down to her waist. It just beautiful long red hair. And when it started coming back in, she had these little spikes coming out. like a newborn when their hair starts coming in. That's what it was like. And so she literally had, as it's growing, 2 different lengths of hair. But Melissa was telling me last night that where she lost her hair is where the hives were. So, and I guess the bottom line to this story is, you know, Shaklee doesn't treat, diagnose, or cure anything. But if you just keep feeding your body whatever you can that you know is truly feeding the body, you know, it's not going to hurt. It can only help. And we know it helped Mackenzie. And she was 2.5 months before she was back to school full time. And she sailed through that school year, no problem, you know, as far as grades and so on. She excelled, even missing that much school through all the illness and everything. And I tell you, this little girl was prayed over as well. So, I mean, they came here, her youth group at that point in time even, and the leaders and the kids, they came. So that's my Shaklee story where my Mackenzie is concerned. And even now, she's on the cheer team in college. And every once in a while, when she gets a little bit overexerted, maybe not quite enough rest, her joints will hurt. She'll be a little achy. It's a little bit of the same symptoms, but she knows how to kick it away and start building herself back up again. So she has everything on hand, but you know, college kids, how much are they actually taking every day? So, but she's a healthy young lady otherwise, and it was just a very scary time. And that's my story.
Wow, Marilyn, thank you. You know, boy, especially with a child, you know, sometimes they don't know how to communicate to you what is going on now. Mackenzie happened to be an 8th grader, so she could communicate to her. She's old enough. But when you've got a smaller child, they sometimes can't communicate, you know, what really is going on. And so appreciate that, you know, because you know, like Marilyn said, they never did give it a diagnosis. She just kept feeding her Shaklee, feeding them, you know, everything that she could get her to eat as far as Shaklee, and she's doing well today. And that's been how many years ago, Marilyn? You're muted.
I think it's actually right at 7 years ago when this all happened.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a long time. That's, boy, you know, thank you, Jesus.
Yes.
for this Shaklee. Man, I just am so grateful so many times, every day, for what it's done for me. So, Nina, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, Marilyn. It's always fun to hear all these stories of different people and the health results they get, and that's why we keep doing it. And we love doing these stories because it helps other people. If you know of anybody, go back in there and look at the different stories and use them to help others. So our next topic is going to be something that is very common today, and I think everybody probably knows somebody who suffered with what Eileen had. So, Eileen, how long have we known each other now?
Since 2009, when I joined Shaklee.
Is that when it was? Okay. Time goes fast.
It does.
It does.
It's been a decade.
Wow, a decade already. So anyways, Eileen has a pretty amazing story, and she is a director in Shaklee as well. But her story, I think, has helped a lot of people already, and so I'm excited to have it here to share with others. So take it away, Eileen.
Sure. No more migraines for me. That was something that I was really plagued with before I started in Shaklee. And I think it was very difficult to even do my job. I was a kindergarten and first grade teacher for 35 years. And really, didn't really was a pretty healthy teacher. I didn't really have a lot of problems with in the earlier years, with when kids were sick, I didn't get sick. I felt, pretty healthy there. But I started having these headaches that turned into migraines. And at the time I was working it was the last couple of years of teaching, and I was working with my brother, John. Some of you know my crazy brother, John. He was a videographer, and we were doing environmental things, videos and whatever for kids. And we were working on these projects, and for about 2 years we were doing things with the kids. I was doing a lot of EPA research about toxins in our environment, and I became very aware of the toxins in my common household cleaners. And I know that that's a story probably everybody on here has had some experience with the changes that Shackley made in their lives just by cleaning changing the cleaners in their house. I was a little bit worried about making the changes at first, and I just decided that I was going to, completely transform my house with the Get Clean and whatever, and realized that some of these cleaners, these other common household cleaners that my brother and I were testing, and whatever, not only had toxic chemicals, but according to the EPA site, some of them even had more than one toxic chemical in them, and then the combinations of these chemicals were like a toxic brew, I feel. And I had problems with allergies and headaches, and I became very sensitive to scents. And a lot of them have fragrances or whatever. I was probably plagued with migraines. I had headaches on and off through my teaching, but no real migraines until about the last 7 years before I started Shackley. And at that time, they just became increasingly worse and worse. I eventually got a prescription from the doctor that would help knock out the migraine, but only if I was on the medication like right away. Like when the onset of the headache started, I had to take my Imatrix. And then that would help, but I felt kind of like in a fog. In fact, I would feel like someone had their hand on the back of my head. And they say that's where a lot of times where the migraine is. Just kind of strange. It would knock the pain out, but some of my migraines could last for 2-3 days. So the migraine headaches just made it very difficult to teach. I always prided myself in being really patient with my kindergartners and first graders. And when you've got a whopping headache, it's just really hard, I think, to stay there. And I also, it was exhausting. I would leave my teaching at the end of the day, and I would just absolutely be exhausted. And my little pack of Imatrix was 9 pills. And I would easily, within the first 10, 15 days of the month, I would go through that pack. And then I wasn't allowed to get any more of that Imatrix drug even to help maintain the migraines. There was once that I actually had a 3-week-long migraine, and they put me in the hospital overnight, and they gave me like a intravenous drip of Imatrix and major pain medications and muscle relaxers and all different things they tried until it finally stopped hurting and got a little bit better. After that, the neurologist that I started working with started me on another drug that I would take morning and night. And that seemed to really help in the sense that it kind of would, I could take it every day, and that it would prevent the migraines from starting usually. So that did help a little bit to manage the frequency of my migraines. However, it also had many side effects with it, as many of prescription drugs do, as we all know. And with that, I also had to take another medication to help me sleep at night, because with that medication, I just couldn't sleep. It was just like, he said, how many hours are you sleeping? And I said, I'm not, and then that would kind of, that could start headaches right there. Being, the insomnia part of that could also bring on a migraine. So it was just kind of a vicious circle. So those 3 pharmaceutical drugs that I was on, helped me continue teaching, but I really didn't feel like I had the same quality of life that I had earlier. And it really made me appreciate those people that have some, major illnesses. And you wouldn't think a migraine or a headache is any big deal, but it really made me appreciate the fact that, some of these people were dealing with these illnesses that were really debilitating. And I think that was really sad. I just really wanted to, I didn't want to have that quality of life for my last, few years of teaching as well. And I certainly didn't want to depend on the prescription drugs for the rest of my life. So then here comes Nina. No, it was actually my niece Jenny, but Nina got us rolling on it. I started in Shaklee in 2009, and I was introduced, and of course, Shaklee, the cleaning products, and of course, their whole integrity and everything that goes with even the vitamins that they had offered were exactly what I needed to solve my problem about my concern with the cleaning products and the environment. So I started with the Shaklee cleaners that were, more safer and more environmentally friendly. They were a lot cheaper, yet they worked really well. And I just basically, my brother John had an in with somebody at the recycling center that actually helped myself and a lot of my other clients that started, and people that joined me in Shaklee. We would even take on their cleaning products, and he would dispose of them, and we would get them to start fresh. Like if you're going to do Shaklee, do the whole thing and see if you really notice a difference. I certainly did immediately. With the scents gone and the better cleaners and the less toxins, I really realized how much that the common household cleaners that I had been using really attributed to my migraine headaches. I started on to help out my niece, actually, is how I got into Shaklee in the first place. My niece, Jenny Washburn, I actually did I was a gold ambassador, so I did the whole RX for a healthier life. So that was Vivix and Vitalizer and Nutrifuron and the protein also that I learned to, make my best, be my best friend. So not only some of the supplements helped, but also the protein helped as well. And, basically to date, I really, I take the whole Shaklee medicine cabinet of things during the day. But if I do feel like a tightness or a migraine coming on, I'll take alfalfa. I'll do an extra dose of Vivix. I also found once they released the vitamin D3, that was also wonderful. I learned that the vitamin D really affects all 8 systems in your body, and that really made a difference too. So there, I guess there were ways that if I felt like I wasn't quite up to par, or that a headache might be coming on, that I could really head it off just with the nutrition part as well. So that's my story. I'm sticking
Awesome,
to it.
Eileen. Awesome. Does anybody have any questions for Eileen? I don't know if you've dealt with or have migraine headaches. Do you have any questions for her of just any questions for her? PJ, go ahead.
How did you start, Eileen? What products did you start with then, as far as the supplements?
Well, I did the cleaning products right away, and then I did the whole RX. So I had the Vitalizer, the Vivix, the protein, and the Nutrifuron. And actually, it was within about a month I started weaning myself, and within the second month, I had totally weaned myself off those 3 prescriptions. And even the doctor was kind of amazed. He said, well, he said, you might really have those whopping headaches come back. And it was just like, and, here I am a decade later. Not only have I not had a headache, but I haven't had a migraine at all. In fact, I haven't been sick in a decade since I started Shackley. So
That's great.
yeah.
Awesome.
It's good stuff.
Could I ask a question? Do we dare? How old do you think Eileen is? Anybody want to guess? It's hard to tell with this.
You don't even know, Marion. Do you know? How old are you?
Remember when we had lunch down at the Dish when you and Nina came through?
Do.
And I don't know.
Did I tell you how old I was then? Did you
I
make me disclose that?
This is going to be on YouTube, remember?
Yeah, right. Do you care?
There's no guesses, huh?
What?
I said there's no guesses as to how old I am.
No. I guess not. But anyhow, she sat there and I don't know what we were talking about, but anyhow, she said she was 62. Now this has been.
I just had my 67th birthday, so that was 5 years ago.
So it was 5 years ago. I mean, look at her. Look at how good she looks, and that's.
Well, it's Shackley. Not only do we have good nutrition, but now we have this amazing skincare line.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And this fun new mascara. It's like, come on. It's like people.
Right.
That was another thing. When I talk about my allergies or whatever, I used to have, no matter what kind of, makeup I would use or what kind of eyeliner or mascara especially, it would get itchy and I would be like itching my eyes. Pretty soon the mascara is like under my eyes. With this new mascara, I have none of that. I think that's really exciting.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And they say that it doesn't even rub off.
No, it doesn't. Although it does come off in the shower easily. It comes off pretty easily with water. I'll use the what's that called? The eye makeup remover. Sometimes before I get into the shower, but there's other times that I'm, and there will be a little bit underneath that I'll get with a Q-tip, but it's like I don't have to, rub my whole eye to get my eye makeup off again like I used to.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found that it makes your lashes longer, Eileen?
Well,
longer looking?
longer looking, but I have some pretty long eyelashes, but now they're white. So once I put some mascara on, I'm like, wow. I have trouble like wearing glasses because my eyelashes will touch my glasses, like my sunglasses. I don't wear glasses, but.
I'll take some.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I would too.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think PJ had a question here, so let's unmute her.
Eileen, my daughter, Leanne, suffers with migraines. They started when she was 5 years old. She's now 42. They started when they put her in a brand new classroom that had so many glues and dyes and everything in it that when I would walk in, it'd be like walking into a store with brand new clothes everywhere where the dye just burns your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I could hardly breathe and I'd have to back out, but that was pre-Shackley and I didn't really realize the effect it was having on her. So I know it's related to toxins. And then when she was born, she was born with a constipation issue. And I think that has a lot to do with a lot of people with migraines too, but she has so many triggers. It's hard to figure out what to do. Everything helps her some, but nothing helps her completely. And so what would you say to somebody like that who has so many triggers? I mean, the environment, the smells, the fluorescent lights, just everything, foods.
Right. Well, and some can have sensitivities to smell, especially kids. But it's not usually foods, or if it is, then it now can be a trigger. But getting those cleaners out of their house and changing things. You think about the kids that have their sheets bleached. And they have that, I have a really good friend that, I love the smell of bleach. It smells so clean. And I was like, my gosh, it's like those kids would sleep on that for 8 hours, you know. And I actually saw a huge difference. I had some special needs kids on the autism spectrum, ADHD, sensory perception disorder, and things like that. And those kids too, I would always recommend to parents to, you know, take a look at different, you know, some could be triggers from foods, but a lot of them were triggers from just the chemicals in our environment. And if they can, you know, and I had a little autistic boy that was highly gifted, and I worked with his mom to totally change the cleaners in the house. And that worked really well. And he actually started on some of the nutrition. His mom wasn't very good about following through. So once he was like a later teenager, he kind of fell off. He doesn't do it anymore, but it kind of got him through some years where he, all those kids are included in the normal classroom. And you're right, it makes it difficult. My daughter teaches 4K in the same district that I taught in. And I work with her about once a week. And I use Shackley products in her room, her partner teacher next door, all the people on her team. I couldn't get the principal to kind of oversee, they had a change of in fact, that her principal was just fired. So that wasn't going to work. But I would, I even, through the principal, was trying to go to the school district and say, make a change for the cleaners that are cleaned in the school. There was one night that we were there, and Sarah, my daughter, had stayed for a meeting after and came back in, and the cleaner was in there and had washed down the tables and stuff, and she was kind of new. And then she was spraying Lysol because she said she knew that she was going to get rid of all the germs for the kids. And my daughter has been using germicide, and the kids help. We spray the tables, they get their rags, they wipe the tables, they rinse them off, they rinse their chairs and stuff. And her incidences of students that are out sick is, probably 1/3 of what it used to be. Just with all those, little 4-year-olds coming up and hands in their mouth, hands in their nose, and all over the place, spreading those germs that, the viruses and the colds that are out there. But so I don't know, I would suggest definitely making a change with the cleaners. But how old is the person? How old is the girl?
She's now 42, and she's
an adult.
Yeah, and she hasn't been able to hold down a job because there's so many triggers she has. Cigarette smoke, if somebody smokes, or the fluorescent lights are blinking, or there's mold somewhere, or mildew in the building. Just so many triggers. So,
what has she done for her immune system, PJ?
She's on a lower income right now, so she's not doing a lot, but she has used Shackley. She loves to use Shackley, Protein, Vitaly, Herbalax, B-Complex. She has used Vivix. She said it helped for a while and then it didn't. But then it may be because of other reasons too. She has used the green cleaner. She used to clean houses for people some, because that's the kind of job where she could do it, and then if she didn't feel good, she could reschedule. And the green cleaners, she would always want to use Shackley, because anytime she was around the others, they give her headaches and bring on a migraine the next day. So all the Shackley seems to help her, but she's never been able to overcome this.
Well, I think the cleaning products is huge, and getting as much any toxins that you can out of the home, their home environment would be great. But I kind of agree with Nina that a lot of it is probably immune system related, and maybe even doing a detox. They talk about the teachers at the school would also do like that, and those antiseptic, not the wipes, but the gel, antiseptic gel, like before the kids went to lunch. And I had one of my teacher friends at my last year of teaching, I actually went back and I was working on the same team, and she was 6 months pregnant, standing there with a jar of this pump, giving each kid a pump because they didn't have time to stop at the bathroom when they left to go down to lunch to wash their hands. And I was like, oh my gosh, And they're saying that stuff on your skin just totally is absorbed and into your bloodstream, and it really, it's hard to get those toxins out of your body. She could maybe even do a simple detox would maybe really help too, I think.
Not get the cleanse, they need cleanse.
Yeah, and so think about how cheap the cleaners are, first of all. That's an easy start. And I would say the other cheapest thing we have, two things that we have, are the vitamin D. You could bump up on that, and that helps all systems, including the immunity. And the alfalfa, for sure, it's like 3 cents a tablet.
Mm-hmm.
And I take anywhere from 10 to 20 a day still, as needed, when needed. It's just good green food, and that, and histamine, and antiviral, all that. So I would, Vivix is probably the most expensive product that we have, but there are some we have that are cheap.
And protein.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You know what, Eileen, talking about that hand sanitizer, when Kimberly had her last baby, and she could not figure out why all of her kids were sick all the time. And I said, well, aren't you giving them their supplements? And she's like, well, yeah, of course I am, Mom. And I was doing a presentation with somebody, and all of a sudden it just like hit me. Mm-hmm. She came home from the hospital with that stuff, and her kids could not come by that new baby unless they use that stuff.
Yeah.
Because they make you believe that. And I was like, oh my land, that's why our kids are sick all the time, because they're breaking their first line of defense. She quit that, and that was the end of their sickness that year.
And honestly, that's just marketing by all those companies, all those cleaners and stuff. Because if you think about it, when you go into a doctor's office and he's been in another room with another patient who might have germs, the first thing he does is go to the sink and wash his hands. And it's probably not antibacterial soap. It's just good soap that he's using to wash his hands. Yeah. So, we need to follow suit with that too, so that those things are not, because those chemicals are absorbed so quickly into the skin that it totally strips those kids, youngsters especially, of their immunity.
What concerns me right now is a lot of times the doctors will come out of one room with a patient, and they'll use the hand sanitizer only before they take care of you. And I have had doctors do that, and I have asked them, I said, will you please wash your hands with soap and water before you take care of me? I'm just there for tests, I'm not sick. And, blood tests or something. And some of them get offended when you ask them to wash their hands. They say, I use hand sanitizer. And I'm like, no, I want you to wash your hands with soap and water. And they think I'm so picky.
But think about even just the scent of that sanitizer. Once they take it and put it on, somebody that uses it on an airplane, that drives me crazy. It's like you can smell it for the 10 seats around. Somebody's got hand sanitizer out, because it's so strong.
And what's so interesting about that is when they first found bacteria and they found how to keep it from spreading, it was just exactly like you said, just wash your hands with soap and water.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they did, and it stopped the spread of all the bacteria. So, well, you guys, I thank you very much. I think tonight's been interesting. Does anybody else have any questions for either of the gals who talked? Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. And every Tuesday night at this time, we have our Testimonial Tuesdays. And then anybody that wants to join on the business end, we have a call on Roland's line tonight. And that number is, Marion just texted it to me. You can go back into Zoom and then just hit zoom.us and go to 837-256-5595. That's the number to get in by him.
Say that number again, Nina.